Staying with news abroad, massive crowds have taken to the streets across the United States to protest gun violence and to collectively call for tougher legislation to control the sale of firearms, assault-style weapons and ammunition. From LA to Boston, Atlanta to Chicago, the March for Our Lives events have been spearheaded by school students in the aftermath of a mass shooting that claimed 17 lives at a high school in Parkland, Florida on the 14th of February this year. The main event was held in the nation's capital, Washington, at the foot of the Capitol Hill as hundreds of thousands rallied both there and up the road in New York.
They came in their numbers, with early estimates suggesting Washington could see well in excess of 500,000 people, while in New York, young and old packed the streets of Manhattan, calling for changes to gun legislation. This 79-year-old protester placed the lack of action firmly at the door of President Donald Trump.
I'm out here today because gun violence has been going on for too long. I remember President Kennedy's assassination 55 years ago. I thought now something would happen. But it's been 55 years and hundreds of deaths since then, many of them children. And it's got to stop, especially with the current administration, Mr. Trump, who is an evil, horrible man, and everybody surrounding him. His entire administration is corrupt and brings shame and dishonor on our country. And he has got to go, and guns have got to go.
Student survivors of the Parkland Florida massacre have galvanized the country into action, warning members of Congress that their perpetual reluctance to change the country's gun laws will have ramifications at the ballot box.
They are keeping their jobs in jeopardy because as these kids grow up, they're going out. They're the last vestiges of a horrible policy run by a horrible group. And when these kids are 18, shortly, and this movement, as you can see, the impact is there. They're on the way out, and that's why they're desperately scrambling.
We need to ban the assault rifles and the ammunition for them. Said I'm here for the children of Sandy Hook, and my girlfriend's granddaughter was killed in Sandy Hook. And my neighbor's daughter was murdered in Boston. And so I'm here for them.
The White House issued a statement applauding the courageous young Americans, while former First Family President Barack and Michelle Obama tweeted encouragement to the young people who made Saturday's marches happen nationwide.
The challenge for these protesters is to translate the energy and action you see on the streets into fundamental legislative action in Capitol Hill so as to fundamentally reduce the number of mass shootings that have become synonymous with these United States. Shervin Briceby's SABC News, New York.
Meanwhile, our correspondent in the U.S., Nina Marie Potts, was in Washington where hundreds of people attended the march against the gun violence.
Well, organisers of this protest hope that some 500,000 people have turned out today in what is shaping up to be one of the biggest anti-gun marches in America's history. There have been protests across the country. Some 800 cities have been experiencing rallies where celebrities and survivors of mass shootings have turned up to make their voices heard. And we've heard those voices loud and clear. There's been a hugely charged atmosphere here today and a lot of emotion and a lot of anger. The question is, does this march really change anything? There was a sense after the Sandy Hook shooting in 2012 where 20 primary school children between the ages of 6 and 7 were gunned down. There was a sense after that shooting in Connecticut that if that shooting did not change the gun control debate in the United States or change policy, then no mass shooting ever would. This is different. Young people have turned out in force. They're digitally savvy, they're angry, and they're emotional. And we've heard their voices loud and clear today. Groups of African American school children have been marching, families, adults. It's not just teenagers, but it makes it much harder perhaps for the pro-gun lobby, the NRA, to bully young teenagers who are online using social media platforms to make themselves heard. President Trump has applauded this protest, but he has also called for teachers in schools to carry more guns. And in an opinion poll last week, teachers said they didn't want to do that. There are real questions over how far President Trump will go. And in a country where the right to bear arms is constitutionally protected, the real question is, how far will Americans go to give up those arms? Nina Maria Potts, SABC News in Washington.